All over the US, people are taking to the streets in the spirit of the Occupy Wall Street movement. For 2 weeks now, protesters have occupied the world financial capital, demanding an end to the stranglehold the giant financial institutions have on American life. The same grip they have on the entire world as well. Since its beginning, the mainstream media has been doing its best to ignore this outburst of public resistance. However, now that it has become impossible, the people cannot be silenced any longer. The government and the ruling elites are trying their best. Over the weekend, over 700 people have been arrested while conducting an occupation of the Brooklyn Bridge. The police used regular beatings as well as pepper spray against the peaceful protesters. The police have blocked additional people from joining the protest by shutting down the subway along with other measures. They're showing their typical cowardly tactics, beating and arresting peaceful protesters in the name of their wealthy masters. The police are not merely standing by as Americans, let alone the entire world, is being destroyed by the financial 1% of the population. They've openly declared their allegiance to them. Law enforcement have declared themselves to be the enemy of the people, as they have so many times in the past, all throughout history. Police have lost the sympathy of the masses. If they end up getting hurt in retaliation for the fascist beatings and attacks they have laid down on their own people. Michael Bloomberg, the New York City billionaire mayor, came out in support of the repressive measures taken against its citizens. He stated the police did exactly what they're supposed to. His insistence was that the protesters did not have the permit to protest. The class nature of this statement and the entire process of it is obvious. Only those with money to be able to protest are allowed to. The permit is also government permission to protest, a true symbol of democracy and freedom of expression. The ability to publicly criticize the government is a granted permission. Police violence does not end there. There have been reports of a woman who announced on Twitter that she had been raped by police officers. At the moment, police have not begun an investigation into this alleged event, but this is the kind of thing that will come out a few months after the occupation is over. Here is how the elite's representative, Michael Bloomberg, actually tried to portray the protest. The protesters are protesting people who make $40,000 to $50,000 a year and are struggling to make ends meet. That's the bottom line. Those are people that work on Wall Street or in the finance sector. We need the banks. If the banks don't go out and make loans, we will not come out of our economy problems. We will not have jobs. And so anything we can do to responsibly help the banks do that, encourage them to do that, is what we need. I think we spend too much time worrying about how we got into problems as to how we go forward. The statement is quite revealing. Bloomberg is trying to portray the protesters as attacking the middle class. This could not be further from the truth. The people being attacked are the top 1%, which are controlling the vast majority of the world's wealth and resources. This is a deliberate act by Bloomberg to distort the goals of the movement. He continues this by claiming that the protesters want banks to stop making loans. This is not one of their goals. No one said stop making loans. The movement is about the hoarding of wealth, the use of wealth to make themselves more wealthy rather than doing not just what is good, but what is needed to be done for the sustainment of human life. You can see where Bloomberg is trying to cover up the causes of this crisis of capitalism. His desire to block criticism of the crisis we're in shows the fear for the ruling elites. We all know the Wall Street bankers and their cronies are directly responsible for the crisis we are in. The decisions they made with the wealth of the entire nation are the cause of our economic problems. Decisions we, the working class, had absolutely no hand in making whatsoever. This is a class issue, and Bloomberg is trying to cover that up. He is trying to cover for the people who brought us here. He's openly displaying his willingness to stop legitimate criticism and discussion of the situation we are in and how we got here. This is a typical theme throughout the media, covering up what is happening. It's obvious to the entire world that the mainstream media have done their best to act as though these Occupy events are not taking place. For 2 weeks, the media blacked out coverage of this event, hoping that it would not gain in popularity or strength. As we know, their hopes were crushed as it gained more popularity and support day by day. It is interesting to contrast this grassroots movement with the phony one of the Tea Party. The Tea Party was billed to us as a grassroots movement, one that supposedly sprang from popular anger towards capitalist bailouts and idiotically perceived foreign-born status. In reality, it was created by corporate shills like Ron Paul and Lew Rockwell types, all to give the perception that the American people wanted the further destruction of their own living standards. The Tea Party was supposed to be grassroots, yet it was so clearly an artificially created movement covered by Fox News. However, by contrast, the real grassroots movement of Occupy Wall Street was blacked out by the corporate-owned media. One easy way to tell who is really supporting freedom, ones who are owned by the system or the ones who challenge it. There have been reports of a group of fascism supporters coming to Wall Street protests trying to provoke violence. As of this broadcast, the identity of the group has not been identified. For several hours, a group of pro-fascists attempted to spark violence among peaceful protesters. The attempt failed, and eventually they were pushed from the scene. Thankfully, they failed in their mission to agitate violence from the protesters. So there has been at least some good news. A group of reactionaries has been unable to disrupt or harm this movement. There are, however, reactionary forces attempting to co-opt this movement for their own purpose. Not only for their own purposes, but the purposes of the Bush Wazee. Several Democratic Party members and pro-Democrat celebrities have come out praising the occupation. Their true goal is not the emancipation of the people, but to simply take control of this movement and use it to propel Barack Obama into a second term. This is a typical ploy by the Bush Wazee. It reminds me of the end of the Marcos dictatorship in the Philippines. As the People's Power movement was pushing the US-backed dictatorship of Marcos out of the Philippines, the US began applauding his removal, insinuating that they had supported the movement the entire time and took some credit for it, even while they were sending weapons to the Marcos dictatorship to crush the people. We're seeing the same thing here being tried with the Wall Street occupation. I doubt it will succeed this time. This whole situation with the Wall Street occupation reminds me of the Petrograd situation all those years ago in Russia. The police brutality did not stop the protesters demonstrating there. It only prompted them to more radical action. The violence perpetrated by the ruling class's bodyguards only accelerated their eventual downfall. I'm not saying that's what's happening here. Typically, the liberal mentality in modern American resistance is prevailing and preventing protesters from taking much more needed radical action. This is the kind of harmful liberalism that Mao spoke against in Combat Liberalism. A type of liberalism that allows for criticism and action so long as it does not actually challenge the institutions or bodies being criticized. Instead of fighting back against police repression, defending themselves, showing that they will not be intimidated, they instead have women going topless, chanting about not being able to afford a shirt. This is the same useless bourgeois liberal mentality the hippies had during the Vietnam War. We need real action to deal with people who are not only harming the entire world through their policies, but murdering people daily through imperialist war and torturing people daily in America with beatings and arrests for simply speaking out against the system in a peaceful manner. How does one propose to counter this barbarism? By showing one's breast to the police force attacking them? Or by defending oneself physically from this blatant attack? Even John Lennon, the icon of the peaceful hippie movement, eventually acknowledged the uselessness of liberal action and supported Mao.